You are watching Access LaPorte County Channel 97. Coming up next is the September 13th meeting of the Michigan City Common Council Mayor's Office Workshop. You can find more information for this meeting at www.accesslaportecounty.org.
So we'll go ahead and get started. I just want to make sure that we're recording and we're actually seeing the PowerPoint in the recording. That way people who are watching can follow along, and then we'll start. That's for Nancy. Let her know we're recording.
Recording in progress.
So you see the Good. Awesome. So we did a test. So the PowerPoint's working. You can see me, and we're recording. So good evening. This is the presentation of my first budget for the 2025 year. And we wanted to make sure that we did a presentation not only for the council, but also for the public to understand our financial standing, where we're at, where we're going, and talk about opportunities going into the future for the next several years. So the agenda, I'm going to talk about the goals of our administration, the findings from previous budgets, process for preparation for this year, a couple of highlights that I would like to share, and then a comparison of this year's budget compared to last year's budget, but talk a little bit so that I can explain and educate the council, but also the public. When you see our budget posted in a newspaper, or if you come to a council meeting, what does it mean when we have negative cash balances, what that looks like in the budget book. And then some of the opportunities that we have to get our finances more stable. As I've shared in multiple council meetings, I still believe that we do need to restrict how we use the riverboat funds. I think that's a fundamental philosophy for me. And I think there are some ways that we can do that. So the goals for our administration is to build trust and accountability with transparency. We've had several financial workshops with the City Council. We did a review of the 2024 budget. We also did a workshop on just basic budget concepts. We held an ARPA workshop, also did a financial workshop on the riverboat and the rainy day funds, and then just meetings, monthly staff meetings with my team, and helping them understand how to read their budgets and how to follow them and how to pull their budget performance reports each month, because I watch them, so I expect them to watch them. We're also utilizing Baker Tilly to help us with our overall financial health. They're doing a review and analysis of our ARPA funds. They're supporting us in our 2025 budget preparation, but also they're going to help us forecast into the future. So my goal and our controller's goal was to build a budget based on historical trends and data. And here are some of the findings just in general, and I guess it helps that I was a part of the City Council and realizing what our lack of understanding was as we went through some of these processes. And now that I'm in the weeds of the budget and looking at it on a day-to-day basis and looking at every single line, there were several things that we've identified, and I would like to thank our controller's office, because anytime they've identified something, they brought it to me immediately for us to figure out, and that's why we've had so many workshops, just to cover those things and to make sure that we're following the rules that are set forth by the council or any statutory guidelines that we have. We wanted to make sure we were very thorough in going back and checking statutes and checking ordinances to make sure we were following what we were supposed to be doing. So what we found is that, of course, and I've shared this multiple times, is that We have been over projecting our revenues in our riverboat fund, also in our rainy day fund, and in our permits and in some other areas. So the problem with that is our budget and our expenses were based on those revenues. So we budgeted against those revenues, and that caused us to eat up a lot of our cash reserves in several different funds. Last year, the national projected pay raises were anywhere from 3.5 to 3.9%. But last year, police received 13%, fire 12%, and then the rest of the employees received 6%. But then on top of that, we increased our longevity pay. So that may be something we have to look at in the future. Will we have to grandfather everybody in and come up with a different benefit package for new employees into the future? That's something we need to think about, not only as administration, but also as a city council. As we start getting newer employees, what does that look like? One of the things that I've asked our attorney to do is, with our salaries, is change it some language to say up to that amount. Because what's happened historically, we set the salary, and someone can have 20 years worth of service, and someone can start the next day and make the same amount of pay with no experience. So we're going to try to right size and do the right thing as we move through these next several years and what that looks like. Also, as you all know, and I've shared at not only the council meeting, but also at the sanitary board meetings, is really the inefficiencies that we see at the sanitary district. So for the sake of this discussion, there are two funds specifically that are part of this budget, and that is on the taxing side. So our stormwater and our refuse are included in this budget, just for sake of conversation, not the whole entire district. So for preparation, we've been having monthly staff meetings, of course, and we've been controlling our capital spending for this year because we know, just because it's projected, and I know the team gets tired of me saying this, just because the money's projected don't mean you have money to spend at all. I said, so the money is like fake money until we get it in the bank. So you can't spend it if it's not there. So really trying to hone that into all of the leaders in the organization to understand it. Just because it's in the budget doesn't mean it's actually there. So we've been really focusing on that. I've done a couple of financial workshops with the sanitary district employees. Several of the leaders, they had never seen the monthly performance report. So I thought it was important that they saw that they'd never seen the budget before. And so we want to make sure from a transparency standpoint that they understand what the budget is and how they have to manage the budget as well. In May, the overtime policy was changed at the sanitary district, and our controllers have been supporting them since day one. Pretty much once we found out where we were in January, we've worked a lot of overtime to support the sanitary district this year. So we also looked at our revenues and expenses from every fund. And I looked at the last 3 to 4 years in every line item. And the cool thing about Baker Tilly and bringing them on board for a more expansive approach is that they're reviewing our budget to see if they're seeing anything that looks out of line or not. So it's good to have a backstop to help us in our first budget year. Some of the highlights you'll see is that there is a reduction in several categories. Mostly it's overtime, supply categories. And then I think we've historically just gotten into a situation where it's been in the budget and we roll it every year. We just roll it just because it's there. And what I did is look all the way back 3 or 4 years, and if the money isn't being spent, why are we budgeting the money? And we did sit down with department heads or something and talk through, what that looks like. Healthcare costs for us going up $2,000 per employee. That has been consistently going up every year. It's just a fact. Healthcare costs are going up everywhere for everybody. Capital spending, we tried to focus on utilizing department budgets and non-reverting funds versus riverboat. Historically, if anybody wanted anything, get it from the riverboat. Go to the council, get it from the riverboat. Well, the riverboat is not there to go to in this case. So instead of a salary increase this year for next year, we're offering a one-time bonus. No raises for next year. I shared with you what we gave last year. It was more than the national average, and we cannot afford it this year until we know what our financial health is going to be for the next couple of years. My goal is to make sure next year that we give raises. That's where we're at. But for this time, I'm going to ask the council to give us a one-time withdrawal from the rainy day fund to give a mid-year bonus to all employees, up to $1,200. So I think that it's a one-time hit versus something that's exponentially going to grow every single year. It allows us to analyze what this looks like. But what you will see is that we cut expenses by $6 million. And just realize that we are in a deficit. And when I say deficit, I'm talking that fake money I said, where we had overprojected and all of that money. This year, we were short because we overprojected our revenues. So we've had to cut back on our expenses, which we've been doing. So your budget workbook for the council members that are here. So in your budget workbook, I just put a sample page because I know we've talked about this in a previous meeting, but I put a sample and I wanted to make sure that I highlighted this for you so that you know how I set up the budget workbook. So this first column that you see here in the budget workbook are the cuts that I made. The second column is what the departments put into the system. So you'll see, you'll look at each department and you'll see that they put in what they wanted, and then I came in and cut it to what I believed it should be, right? And then the 2024 adopted budget, that's from last year, and then we put the actual amounts for 2023 and 2022.
Angie, I'm sorry, where are we at in this?
We're going to get more into the budget, but you can just look at your PowerPoint if you want.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, you can just look at your PowerPoint. This is just a sample page, because I want you to see how I'm setting up the visuals for you all. Is that you got the budget that I put in, but I wanted you to see what the council requested as well. The departments. No, yeah. I wanted you to see what the departments requested and what we ended up with. And then some historical data so that you can see, from a historical perspective, what we've had in the budget. So 2024 and 2025, this is a comparison between the 2 years on some of our bigger funds. So the general fund, of course, is our tax, is what we receive through taxes, property taxes. And then we have our riverboat fund. Our MVH is pretty much what funds our street department, park operating, our lit economic development fund, which we used to call seated. So if I say seated, it's that fund, and then all other funds. So I'll just tell you what the bottom line is. Our expected total revenues is expected to be about $753,857. It's always a mouthful. And then our expected expenses against that is $237,198. Now, we're still negative, so we are going to go into the cash balances, but you'll see from another slide, we'll talk about those cash balances a little bit. So you can see from 2025 from 2024 to 2025, a lot of these categories and revenues have gone down. General fund, these are our expected revenues. Riverboat, we're expecting about $8.1 million from Riverboat. Many of you, just to know that back in the day, we were getting over $10 million on a regular basis from Riverboat. One of the funds that I didn't put up there was a Boyd Gaming Fund. And our Boyd Gaming Fund typically used to run anywhere from $450,000 to over $1 million. We've been getting $50,000 a year for the last couple of years. And we've been budgeting against $450,000 and only receiving $50,000. So that has really eaten up that cash balance. But you can see, again, NVH, that's through the state. Half of that, our NVH funds, half is restricted that we have to use on roads, and the other half we can use on salaries in the street department. Park operating, the same. Park operating has been doing better. They're very, very good about their budget. So just wanted you to see it from a fund perspective, what those numbers look like. And now let me go into negative balance, because when we go into your book, you're gonna see some funds that show a negative balance. Like for instance, refuse, when we go to, if you look in your budget, you'll see a negative balance of $396,483. Well, it's negative based on the revenues coming in just for 2025. But they have a cash balance. We're projecting them to have $1.597 million at the end of this year. So we're going to use some of their cash balance because we got a grant for 3 CNG trucks. So we need to encumber that money, and we need to account for that money. So that's why that's a negative. It's not saying we're having a negative balance. It's saying we're cutting into the cash reserves to make sure that we get those CNG trucks. Our rainy day fund, I'm asking for a one-time bonus for city employees. So again, that balance will have projected about 1.8 million in there, and we're asking for 400,000. The same senior center, they have a capital project, so they're going to use some of their money from their non-reverting senior center fund. Promise scholarship, the same. It's not a revenue generating fund, but we take out the money for the scholarships, the salary, things like that. Fire pension this year, the same. So when you see negatives in your book, it's not saying that the fund is negative. All it's saying is that you're eating into your cash reserve. Right? We can't have negative funds. Isn't that correct? We cannot have negative funds, or we're going to get flagged. Right? So opioid. This one here, again, $53,914, we moved a police social worker into that fund this year. These are the estimated cash balances just for these funds, but I thought these were the ones that we should highlight for the council when you start looking through your budget books. And I'll pause for the council. Do you have any questions for the two of you? I know we're just starting, Nancy. You got any questions, Nancy, before I?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this is our overall budget based on the top 7 departments within the city. So again, we said that the budget is 67 million. So our police department accounts for 12.56 million. You'll see fires next. Park department has, remember, maintenance, zoo, senior center, golf course, all of those. Oh, it's not in part of the park operating, but still, nonetheless, from a department head standpoint, it's a huge operation. Refuse, and then our street department, our engineering department, well, we hadn't had one in a while, so that one increased. Because we're doing more streets and sidewalks and street lights and traffic, like you name it, we're doing it. Planning department, they went up because we have leases that we have to buy out this year. So you can see that because we have vehicles that we're going to buy out the lease and stop try to get away from doing leasing of vehicles and purchasing them. So all other departments are about 29 million of that $67 million or 66 million that we have. Okay, so going into the budget book. So if Nancy, I know I did this briefly, but if you can go into your tab, so I can talk through this a little bit. I'm gonna go back a couple of slides and talk through. Actually, I'm not going to. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. Stop sharing. There we go. Oh, I can see myself. Okay, so in the budget book, so the way your budget books are set up, it has my letter that talks a little bit about our goals, some of the highlights. It has a PowerPoint that I'm presenting, but then it has a tab that has your actual budget in it. And it has a list of all the page numbers and then all the expenses by department. One of the things that has been confusing for some is that, especially when it's advertised to the public and it's in the newspaper, is that you'll see these departments or these different funds and they'll have 000. 000, we receive our revenues into these funds, right? We receive our revenues into these funds, but there could also be expenses out of funds like that. Like for instance, we know ESG. I can use ESG because we just had a workshop. ESG is one of those things that's not spread across different departments or within a department head's purview, but it's going to come out of a line item. So I don't even remember which one. Riverboat. Comes right out of Riverboat, but it comes out of Riverboat 000. Like 101 is controllers, 102 is, 103 is, right? So I know the departments, right? We all got a number. So all the departments have a number, but each fund will have a 000, and you'll see the revenues that come into those departments. And then you'll start breaking down. And so each fund will have different departments if departments are funded by it. So like general fund, you'll see, all these different departments within the general fund. You won't see the street department in general fund. You'll see them in the NVH fund, for instance. There could be non-reverting funds that may cover like the golf, cemetery. They have their own funds. But what I think we haven't ever talked about are those transfers that we do from the Riverboat. This has been going on since I was on the council in 2000, whenever, right? 2008. But we do Riverboat transfers to cover our costs. So Riverboat, there's a transfer to the general fund. We've been transferring increasingly our street department for several years. So, for instance, there was legislation that changed, I think in around 2018 or 19, and all of a sudden we start seeing a shift in our costs from the Riverboat to cover street department. Well, I was like, are they adding a bunch of people? I didn't know what happened until I looked back. Well, the law changed. It used to be just a fund that you can fund your department, do what you want. I think the legislators downstate said, well, you get this bucket of money, are you just paying for salaries or are you fixing roads? So what they did is they restricted and said half of the money has to be used on roads and you can use the other half for salaries and operating. Well, if you already have a full department, you cut their money in half, you gotta go get it from somewhere else. Well, what most communities did is they passed the wheel tax. We're one of the very few communities that never passed it. We just been using our Riverboat money to cover the cost. And I've shared that information with the council. I am gonna be asking for that for next year. We missed the deadline for this year. The deadline is August for us to get it for the following year. So we have not been utilizing that opportunity to the tune of about $670,000 a year. So we just been using Riverboat to cover Riverboat, eating up Riverboat every year to cover the cost of our street department. If you go to page, and I'll just give you an example in your books. Go to page 5 of 132. That is the controller's office. And I'll just kind of explain it to you. So whenever you go into a department, you're going to see their expenses, and it's going to list all of the employees. It's going to tell you their salary, their unit, if they're hourly, if they're salary, list their positions. It shows all of their wages, budgeted overtime, benefits, and then it gets down into supplies, communication, electricity, all of the expenses that each department would have. And it happens for every single department and every single fund. So the reason why I'm explaining it this way, because now you got almost a month to look through your books and make sure you understand, the expenses that are in there. And the cool thing is you can see mine, what I cut, you can see what the departments asked for, but you can also see the historical data, right? And that's important because I didn't willy-nilly cut budgets just based on, hey, I just don't like this or whatever. I try to use some common sense, number one. But number two, we know we've been over projecting our revenues, and we know that we need to live within our means, and that was the goal of this budget. That was truly the goal of the budget, was to live within our means. So I do want to share one last slide as well. Let's see if it'll let me share my window.
Try to cancel it and see if it'll allow me. This is go back to share screen.
So let me do this, and I think I have to do this. Technology, you gotta love it. So the last slide in the presentation is really about the opportunities, and I started talking about it. We had a workshop a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. We've been working on the fee analysis, consolidation of fees, and analysis on what the fee should be. There's going to be an ordinance that comes forth in October. And Baker Tilly has been working on this. We've been working on this actually since March of this year. And a lot of our fees hadn't been increased or even used since the 70s, 80s, 90s. So we're consolidating fees, but also trying to make sure that we're in the mid-range of what our neighbors are doing as well. So you'll see an increase in some of the permitting fees, implementation of technology and planning, refuse and central services. We're down the path. We've already started the process on the permit the permitting software, but also in several of our departments, our Kentone, trying to do more things in real time and creating data so that we can follow the data on what the needs will be. A couple of refuse ordinances focused on service special pickups and also illegal dumping. I had a great conversation with the operators union today, and we talked about how do we eliminate illegal dumping and what are some things that we can do differently. The proposal of a wheel tax for the 2026 budget to continue our increased efforts on street repairs and sidewalks. I am going to propose, we do have a revolving loan fund. We haven't given out a loan in over probably about 5 years. There's about $1 million in there. It came from Boyd Gaming, and that fund is going to be depleted after next year. So I need to put some money in there. We're still receiving loan payments, but I do need to put something in there so that that fund doesn't go into a negative balance. And then the ARPA analysis, we need to identify the money we haven't spent, figure out if there's a way. We did identify, Baker Tilly identified some things we may need to change into some different buckets. So we want to make sure that if we need some of that money to do, to increase our service delivery for next year or supplement some capital spending, that we do that. So I know that we put forth the ordinance, a resolution and appropriation, but we may have to backtrack a little bit on some of those monies to make sure that we provide services to the city still. So that is it in a nutshell, but I'm open to questions. And let me stop sharing this.
My big question is just like, so a lot of the savings comes from cutting the overtime. So if something horrible happens next year and we have to pay a lot of overtime, where would that come from? But also that's, if we were gonna budget it in, it'd be coming from that place too, right? I don't know if that makes sense.
I know what you're saying. So if we need money, we'll come back to the council. That's what it is. But like for instance, one of the things that I looked at is, okay, I can use the police as an example. So
Yeah, because that was gonna be my example, and like that's
so
a
let me
weird
use,
example.
I can use, that's the best example.
Okay,
I'm
good,
gonna use the
yeah.
police as an example.
Because they're all over the place.
So no.
Okay.
Let me explain the reason why I cut the overtime. So since we've been on the council, my council, last council, we were never close to full complement.
Right.
And so the overtime that was budgeted was based on that. That was I can say it now, but I would never say it back then. But we were short in double digits of police officers, short in double digits, and a lot of new officers. So it required more overtime and more bodies to accommodate what we didn't have. But since then, we've implemented technology, and we're like one shy of full complement of officers. So I'm not going to pad the overtime. If we need more overtime, we'll give it to them. But right now, I'm telling the departments, you need to live within your means. You need to manage your budgets. You need to look at them constantly. You need to follow what you have. And if it gets down to a point where we have a situation, another snowstorm of the century, we'll accommodate that. But in the meantime, from me as administration, it's up to me to secure our finances into the next several years. And this is the way we're going to do it. We're going to live within our means. We're not going to pad the budget. We're going to scrutinize the budget on a monthly basis. And if we need more money, we'll ask for it. That's where I'm at. So that's why the overtime is like that.
So that department's one example. If I was gonna look at Parks and Rec, would that be a more stable example to look at?
What I'm telling you is you look at every department.
Yeah. But like for the conversation right
Yeah, look at every department. And then also, capital,
Okay.
we don't have a whole lot of capital in the budget. There is some capital in the budget. Like something new this year, we found like our cigarette tax fund, we're using that for police cars. We found out that's a use that we can use it for. So we're using that. I've asked redevelopment commission to match that money for so that we can buy out leases. I'm looking for creative ways not to use the riverboat funds, basically. So that's kind of that's a good example. We've had that fund forever and really just kind of said, okay, we budget, not use a whole lot, but the cigarette tax, we went and looked at our local ordinance and then we looked at the state statute on what that money could be used for. So we're dealing with our police cars out of that instead of just going straight to riverboat. So we're going to be creative, but stay within our parameters. And the goal is to get to a place where we get a wheel tax, we increase our revenues, we get these houses built, we start getting that tax, that property tax, and then we can start putting money back into the rainy day fund. That's the ultimate goal. Yes.
I see something I've never seen before. There's two items here. One's called vacation buyback and the other's called sick buyback.
That's in there every year.
What is it?
It's vacation buyback and sick. So
I
basically,
don't
We
understand.
can sell back,
When you don't
yeah,
take
we can sell
vacation
back.
paid.
if we don't take it, we can sell it back.
Yeah, so basically, in our employee handbooks, there's a maximum number of hours you can sell back annually after you've accumulated so many. And so that's budgeted every year, that employees can sell back or buy back if they don't use their vacation or sick pay, sick time.
Okay.
If they don't sell it back.
If they don't sell it back, you talking about sick?
What
Or
happens
anything.
to it?
So let me say this. Yeah, this is great. I think I should say this on camera. We have a situation where people tend to roll over vacation and sick pay that they're not supposed to and they're not following the policy. I've taken the stance that if you leave the city, you're gonna get what the policy says, nothing more. So use your sick and use your vacation. Otherwise, you lose it. That's where I'm at, and I've
Well, it's
stuck to that. But historically, previous administrations, they haven't. And so what happened to me this year, walking in the door, we had situations where people were leaving and then saying, well, I got all this time I've accumulated for 4 years. And I'm like, the budget did not budget for that. And that's not fair to me as a mayor. So we did put some parameters into the policy so that no future elected official after me can do that. So me or anybody else. So we did change that policy because I was very irritated by that. So anytime I see something like that, I'm making sure for the future of Michigan City that I'm not allowed to do those things or anybody else. So that's what we did.
Okay, thank you. The other question I have regarding that is, has any consideration gone into combining vacation and sick time and just labeling it as personal time so that people are not having to reveal why they're taking the time? I know one of the last places I worked, that's what happened, so it was just, all combined together and then you could personally decide what you were gonna do.
I don't know if that has been discussed, but I know we have several different unions and several different contracts that we have to abide by. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 unions or 5.
Okay.
So I think that might be part of it. And then you still have the sanitary district who follows our policy as well. So something to consider.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It keeps people in integrity.
Yeah.
You know, that they're not using sick time for vacations or, you know, whatever. Some people just don't get sick.
Yeah, that's true, but they need to sell it back and use it or lose it. That's the way I see it. Did you have a question, Mark?
No.
Chief? Yes.
Okay, if you will bear with me, I have a few.
Okay.
They're easy ones, though. There were pretty large raises for the police department, the fire department, and even staff, but wasn't that after many years of no raises?
That's not true.
Not true?
Nope.
With healthcare,
You never said that way, too. My mom said you never said that.
I thought
No,
That never came out of my mouth.
So, but let me give you a little history. I think it was, so let me give you a little history. So, the last 4 years, there were significant raises to a lot of folks to right size. Back in 2022 and back in 21 and 22, we went through that process. Last year was, I'm just gonna say it, an election year, right? So, okay. But also, our recruiting and our lateral transfer program, next to none. And I think, too, what people have failed to realize, and we don't share enough, we have good benefits. We have a $1 insurance plan, right? And people don't realize that. You see how our expenses
well, that was
were
my next question.
for medical?
Are there I mean, you know, our paycheck has a few $400 a month taken out of it. Are there monthly co-pays on the health benefit plan here?
For some people, yeah. It depends on what plan you take.
What plan. You can buy down kind of a lower deductible.
You can't buy down.
Your dollar plan has got a much higher deductible.
Correct. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and, but the beauty of that, we've done a couple of things with that. So we have a contract with North Shore. I can use myself as an example. I have the high deductible plan at $1. Even at any place I worked, I've had the high deductible plan. It still pays $300 or $400, right?
Right.
And so I go to North Shore to the clinic because I get my prescriptions free. And that's a service that we're providing to the employees. So all employees can go, and our city council people can go to North Shore. We're gonna have a full service North Shore here next year. Right now I drive to Chesterton, but I've never paid zero for prescriptions. So I'm trying to encourage employees, hey, weigh your benefits, really take a look at, you know, how much you're paying for maybe a lower deductible plan and how much you're spending on prescriptions to get your deductible, and compare it to what if I do $1 and go here for the majority of my stuff. You know, that's a savings to the city. Not saying that they care or don't care, but it does help the city if they do that. It's cheaper. So I think we just got to do a better job of communicating the plans and the impact that it has to us, but for them to understand how it impacts their family.
In that Baker Tilly study, we have we help other municipalities, like we supply sewer, water, or whatever it is. And I understand it feels like that's where the money's at. And that maybe I was surprised those fees weren't in the Baker Tilly study 2 years ago.
Well, no, let me say this. A lot of the studies and things that have happened over years, the salaries, all that, the sanitary district was asked if they would like to participate, and it was no. Okay? So now we're in a space that we're working together. We're actually going through an analysis of the plant, the assets and everything else with them, but that's a journey for sure.
You know, because a wheel tax, you guys are going to just hear about a wheel tax bigly, as it were. Whereas if you could hit another municipality up for $100,000.
Yeah,
or
but you know,
whatever
but it's interesting. People want their streets paved though,
And they want sidewalks.
and they want sidewalks. So I think it's the way we communicate it. I think that if we weren't doing streets, I've gone to the redevelopment commission to help pay, and to help subsidize, but I can't keep doing it right now. But that's what we have to. It was put in place for that, and I think we just rely so heavily on Riverboat, we just never thought about doing it. And I've said it. I think it's important enough that we have to do it. And even smaller towns, 5,000, no, they're all doing it. We're one of the very few that does. LaPorte has it, everybody, all our neighbors have it. So one of the things when we go through the process of going there, I'm gonna list all the cities that have it, and we're gonna be one of, I think we're the only second-class city that probably doesn't have it. So, you know, we have to look at it from that perspective.
And when you say buy the police cars off lease, like buy them for, keep the cars for a few more years hopefully?
Keep them for a long time.
Yeah, buy them off.
But we're
Not just
also,
every
we're
place
trying
for
to,
cars.
we're trying to figure out how to keep the rotation without getting too far out of
Right,
sync.
there has to be a
Because
cycle.
the reason why we're leasing cars is we got out of cycle. During COVID, like early on in COVID, it just was no spending, and then you get out of cycle, you know, and things happen, and those cars get a lot of miles on them. So we got off track, and so now we have leased vehicles, and then trying to figure out how to still buy them. So like, if we figure out our ARPA, you know, and all these other things, maybe there's some capital spend in there, I don't know what, but we have to focus on putting them in the right buckets. We have to follow federal guidelines in everything that we do.
Last question. The 11th Street Station, the condos that go in there, since that's in the TIF district, will you get property taxes from that into the general fund?
It stays there.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
So
TIF.
some of our new developments actually won't help us.
Multi-units, yes. Mostly multi-units, not housing units though. So like if someone is building homes, that's different.
Right.
I think that, but it generates other things, you know, so it's still.
If they're outside a TIF district, it'll go to the general revenues.
Mhm. But even with that, you know, I'm asking them for public health and safety money. You know, I'm asking the redevelopment commission to chip in for those things, so, as long as they're doing that, we're gonna be fine. But, they haven't said no to anything I've asked for, or the police or anybody, so I asked specifically for cars. I said, if we're gonna have all these projects, I need more police cars.
Actually, I like one last thing. That's fantastic work. It got $6 million of the budget. Well done.
Oh, thank you. Any other questions? Any other questions? Well, that is the workshop. I want to make sure that we recorded it so that if anybody had any questions or concerns, that they can see it on Alco, on the YouTube channel, and that I can send this link out to all of our council members so that they have any questions as well. So thank you again for coming and asking questions, and I'm going to stop the recording now.